Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. As we continue our week of visiting with JPV Press authors, we are so pleased to welcome now Phil Barkman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Author of For Room and Board, a memoir of Atlee Barkman. Interesting title. I'm hooked already. So tell us a little bit about the book first, Phil.
Well, it's about my dad, Atlee Barkman, and as we were growing up, Dad always had stories to tell, and we always enjoyed it, me and my brothers and my sister, and we never gave it much thought about what his life was really like as a young boy growing up and a young man. And as we, of course, grew older, these stories took on a little more significance, and we began to think of how they affected Dad and Mom. And so I thought, well, this would be some good stories to write down. And so I started doing that. I just started recording them and writing them down. I thought it'd be interesting for the family. And as time progressed, I just began to think it'd make a good book. So.
Mm-hmm. Is he still with us?
He is not. He passed away a little over a year ago.
Did he know that did he live long enough to know his stories were becoming a book?
He did. He did.
And his reaction to that?
I think he was quite excited about it. He would have loved to see the book, and that's my one regret, that he didn't get to see the book.
I think he did.
Yes, he might have, yes.
But, for Room and Board, I'm guessing this means he had a good work ethic, I'm guessing.
He did.
That he was willing to do what it took to take care of his wife and his family. Is that where this is coming from?
The title actually comes from the fact that he was sent out for room and board, to live for his room and board at 5 years old.
What?
Yes. That was the first time that he went to live with his aunt and her husband. And
was this during Depression era, or what was
yes,
the reason?
It would have been around 1935.
Oh, my goodness.
And
at the age of 5.
At the age of 5.
That can affect people in one of two ways, Phil, probably more than that. But you can either turn one way or you can definitely turn another way. He could have ended up being a very different person.
Exactly.
What was it, you think, that brought him to the point where he actually grew into someone who would inspire you and your brother?
Well, I think as he became a born-again Christian when he was, I believe, around 21 years old. And he was always, throughout his life, he was just so grateful to God for having, for the love that God had and the grace that he showed to him. And so he was always just a very thankful, grateful man. And he learned, obviously, from a young age to adapt very quickly to different situations, because he was moved around in numerous different places to live, different schools, and he had to learn to adapt quickly.
Earlier this week, we got to meet with an author who had done something about prison ministry, who said that really, if you want to know who the next generation of people in prison will be, look at who's in prison right now. It will be their kids. And these people didn't have a father figure. The future criminals don't have a father figure right now. Your dad didn't really have the father figure that he then became, yes? Or am I reading that wrong? He bucked the system.
Yes. You're right. He didn't have a very good father figure growing up, although I think there were some of the men in the homes that he lived in that were a good example to him. But he just learned to adapt and to live with what life threw at him, and was quite adventuresome and independent.
Did you ever have talks with him where he told you, I made up my mind I was going to do it differently when I had a family of my own?
One of the things that made that difference was, I think he did determine to avoid some of the things that his father, the way that he had lived his life. And he really made that a focus, and to be a good husband, to be a good father, and then with the power of God in his life, it just really made a tremendous difference in his life. Mm-hmm. And the more I looked back on his life as I was listening to these stories and writing them down, I just developed a tremendous admiration for the man that he became, because you're right, he could have been a very bitter and angry man.
He was a good storyteller.
He was a great storyteller.
And he must have passed that on to you.
In part, I believe he did, yes.
And
yes.
Does your brother like to tell stories as well?
Not as much. I have two brothers and one sister, and I guess I'm kind of the storyteller among them.
Is there a favorite that you can share with us as far as something? Give us a little hint, a tidbit of what we will find in For Room and Board, a memoir of Atlee Barkman.
I think one of his favorite stories was Mom and Dad were just recently married, and they were at that time Amish, members of the Amish church. And they were going home from town one evening, and Dad had a fast horse. He loved fast horses. And as they were approaching the home driveway, he noticed that the right rein was loose. And the horse was traveling at a really fast rate of speed. He knew he was going to turn into the driveway, and it could cause problems. So he stepped forward over the dashboard of the buggy, worked his way up the shafts of beside the horse, and then threw his leg over the back of the horse, jumped on his back, and grabbed the bridle and pulled back and got the horse stopped right at the driveway.
And so there was no overturning of a buggy and crisis averted.
Exactly.
That's Hollywood stuntman stuff.
Yes.
He jumped from a buggy onto a racing horse.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
And I think that was one of his favorites. Yeah.
Did it get better with each retelling?
He pretty much stuck to the original script.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. For you, this has got to have been such a personal experience to be able to take these stories and realize, to not just know that they're stories, but to know the man behind them. How did it work for you as far as sitting down and doing this?
The more I did it, the more I just came to admire him and Mom. And it also gave me a good look back into my history. Grandparents, great-grandparents, that sort of thing. And it just really established where I've come from and the family lineage, the history, and just the stability that passes on. And I just really came to appreciate the life that I was given by the life that Mom and Dad lived.
I'm guessing you only knew him as a Christian. If he became a Christian at the age of 21, I'm guessing you were born after that. What did that do as far as raising up young men to also be Christian fathers once you had your own home?
He was just a great example. Mm-hmm. He was a great example. And one of the things, I think this is one of the highest compliments I can give him, is he was the same man at home that he was out in public. The enthusiasm and the devotion to Christ, that's the way he was at home. Mm-hmm. And I have always really admired that.
He was raised in the Amish community,
yes.
Became a Christian at age 21.
Yes.
Do you know much of his testimony, his story? Did he stay in the Amish community, or he and your mom left the Amish church? Or
yes.
What of that do you feel comfortable sharing with us?
They married Amish, and then my two oldest siblings were born while Mom and Dad were in the Amish church. And then they left the Amish church a few years before I was born. So then Dad became a pastor in the Mennonite church.
Oh, my goodness. So, all right. So you're also a pastor's son.
Yes.
All right. Tell us about growing up in your home. What was that like? Yes, if he's a storyteller, I'm sure you got to sit in a pew and hear a few things about yourself.
Yes, occasionally.
Stand-up comedians and pastors. Those kids have to listen to stories about themselves.
Yes. It was a good life. It was a good life. It was a very simple life. We grew up, no radio, no TV, that sort of thing. Lived out in the country, so we had, lots of room to run and play and pretty much lived outdoors as much as possible. I learned to love to read from my mom. She would take us to the library. We'd get tons of books. And so that's where my love of reading came from. And we just had a good life growing up.
Mm-hmm. Is this your first book?
It is, yes.
Very first. How did you get connected with JPV Press?
Well, I actually work for Plain Target Marketing, and I'm the editor of the magazine. And so I was working on the magazine when we started up the book publishing division. So it just seemed natural to have JPV Press do my book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yes. I understand it just is definitely a God thing as far as the people who have been gathered together to work together with common goal and mission in mind. Loving that authors are not just trying to make a buck, but really continue to use funds together with something much higher in mind as far as reaching others with the gospel. Can you touch on that a little bit?
It's a fantastic team to work with. And for myself personally, to be able to work at something that is not only a job, but it's a mission. To me, that is worth so much more than just the money. And I really enjoy it. We have a great team. We get along, and we have that common vision, that common goal. And it just makes a tremendous difference in, as we pursue different projects and that sort of thing. It just adds that extra element of we're doing this for a reason.
It's a bit of a jump to go from editing to writing to working on a magazine, a periodical, to actual book writing. Did you find that a difficult couple of dots to connect, or was that not too difficult?
It was a fairly steep learning curve, yes.
In what ways?
Well, one of the things that I learned in writing the book, especially coming towards the tail end of it, there are a lot of loose ends that need to be gathered together to wrap it up, to make it a final package. There's just a lot of things that you don't really think about when you pick up a book and read it, or even working in the magazine with the magazine. There's just different elements involved. And so I had to learn a lot, and as a team, we had to learn quickly. Mm-hmm. But I like to think that it went very well, and I'm just happy to be able to have this book and, to have Dad's story out there. And I think people will enjoy, because it's some adventure, some sad stories, some very happy stories. And it was a lot of fun to do. It was a lot of work, but it was fun.
I'm so impressed with every single one of the books that have been brought to us today as we're doing these conversations. But JPV Press is top drawer as far as the covers, just the quality of it. Even just the paper used and so forth. It's just top quality. And it's a young company.
Yes.
You're kind of in on the ground floor. How does that feel?
It feels very good to see it from the beginning and to see the team as it's built. Marlon knows how to build a team, and he did a fantastic job. And with everyone involved in the book, they all learn quickly, and they do, I think, a fantastic job. You
said your background was marketing prior to doing this?
Not mine.
Oh, okay. What was your background prior to doing this?
Well, actually, for the 10 years before I did this, I was cutting meat.
I love this story. The thing I've always said to my own kids is you can do anything and be a writer. That's what's so great about being a writer. So you can be a meat cutter and be a writer.
Yes. I lived in Phoenix, and I went to culinary school out there. And that's actually where I learned how much I like to write. Because prior to that, I had not written. And with having to take the classes and having writing projects, I discovered that I really like this. I can get the thoughts in my head out on paper. And that's really where the writing all started. But then I did do the meat cutting for 10 years, and God opened the door, and I figured, well, I better hustle on through.
This is a cool story. We're going to peel back that a little bit more, but we do need to take a short break. We're visiting with Phil Barkman, author of For Room and Board, another one of the JPV Press authors this week. You're listening to Our Community.